Hello, and welcome to the third and final installment of the Eye of the Serpent Q&A session for 2024. My name is Edgar Martin Ocampo, and as many of you know, the Eye of the Serpent channel is dedicated to Native American culture, language, spirituality, and religion. And what I'm going to do is look at some of the major ideas from the third part of your questions that I invited you to give me for this 2024 installment. So they had to do a lot with the ways in which these lessons from the channel can be put into practice. So specifically, how have I applied many of the lessons that I've gained from my travels and explorations into my own work? So this is a very complicated and very extensive subject that I would actually like to expand into new series for the channel, especially going into 2025. But I can at least make a few kind of like summarized points about like some specific examples of how the lessons that I've gained from traveling, especially to collect content for these videos, have inspired me and kind of shaped the direction that I take in terms of spiritual practice that I think could be of value and utility to any of you. So, for example, I can talk about some specific recent travels that I made since 2023. In 2023, one of my main travels was to New Mexico for the Day of the Dead week. And one place that particularly impressed me, I would say that especially good example of how I use the kinds of lessons that I've gained from going out to the field and learning from these traditions and thinking about ways to apply these is when I went to Chaco Canyon. This was actually my first full day for that week in New Mexico, and specifically the Great House of the Pueblo Bonito. And one part that particularly impressed me was not just the architecture, but also in front of the building, kind of overlooking the canyon itself. There were these two large mounds of unclaimed, unused, broken shards and debris from centuries of occupation and use. These were pots and plates and tools and other instruments that had been left by the ancient or the ancestral Pueblo peoples who inhabited the Chaco Canyon, especially like say, I think from the 9th to the 11th centuries AD. And something that I thought about was the ways that this related to many Native American concepts of the life cycle of technology, the life cycle of not just the humans and the animals of the world, but also the instruments that humans use in society. And this explains why many native cultures, especially North America, have some sort of initialization, some sort of initiatory rites for important instruments and tools that they will be using for either ceremonial or day-to-day, like say, quotidian life. And if these instruments have a beginning and a lifespan, they will therefore have an end. And in fact, in many of these same traditions, there are termination rituals. That's the term that many anthropologists use to kind of end, like ceremonially conclude and complete the life cycle of an instrument or some other technological device. And this includes household objects such as the ceramic pieces, the pots, the pans, the cups, especially once they're broken. In some cases, they will be mended and repaired and still good for reuse. But there comes a literal breaking point where that item no longer has any utility, or it's outlived its lifespan, so it is best to return it to the earth. And so these two huge mounds in front of the Pueblo Bonito Great House were just filled with these remnants, this debris from these decades or even generations of occupation and usage. And so I thought about that. How does this relate to my own use of the tools, the technologies that I have? And I thought especially about, as many of you know, I went to Salem earlier in 2024. And I actually made a short of my original apartment, which was consumed in a large house fire. And a lot of my old photos and videos and collections were completely destroyed. I would like to actually return to parts of Mexico to retake a lot of those photos and videos, especially Yucatan and Veracruz. But going to New Mexico and thinking about those deposit mounds, thinking about how once these objects ended their life, it's time to just leave them be, let them go, return them to the elements so that they can kind of uh, return those constituents, those components back into the life cycle of the earth itself, and then hopefully might be able to, like say, be regenerated into new resources in the earth. So it is about returning what is no longer useful and being able to let go of that attachment. And this is something that that's helped me reconcile that tremendous feeling of loss, especially in those first years when I thought about how many photos and videos and how much content that I could have used for this channel I will have to redo, but I just have to accept that they lived their lifespan. They served their purpose for the time that they had. And now I can accept that once their purpose had been fulfilled, I can let them return to the elements. In the case of Pueblo of the ancestral pueblos in Chaco Canyon, it was specifically being returned to the earth. In my case, it was about returning into the fire and into the ether. But in all these eventualities, it was about being able to let go of things that have already lived their life out. And I can now move on and I can build new things after I have kind of accepted that these things must now be returned to the source. So that was one of the most important lessons that I have kind of been meditating and contemplating how to apply into my own daily life from that specific trip to New Mexico. Another recent one, it was from my 2024 visit to Colombia. And in this case, one of the lessons or the insights that especially impressed me was being on the Amazon River itself and being surrounded by the rainforest on both sides of this massive body of water. And it really felt like an arrival at the source of life, this kind of like being in this mythical space, this origin of the life on Earth, and a place that is still renowned as the lungs of the Earth, as a foundation to the overall life cycle and processes of the entire planet. But for me, the most important and impactful insight that I gained from actually being on the river was thinking about how each of the trees that I saw on the way was, according to the indigenous perspective, a sentient, conscious, autonomous, animistic being. It was a living person that had its own soul, it has its own will. And the rainforest itself is a network, a web of these different conscious beings, each with its own will and intentions, its own energies that are all converging and interacting with each other in this massive network of different entities and agendas and movements within this ecosystem. And so each plant, each bird, every bird that I saw in the sky, every like monkey I saw in the trees was its own person. And since I've returned to Texas, I've often go to some of the parks around Central Texas, and I like to walk around and I do similar kinds of contemplations, just kind of like these walking meditations, thinking about that same idea about how even on another continent, those principles may still apply. That the oak, the pines, other plants and trees, and deer and other wildlife are here too, sentient, conscious, animistic creatures with their own willpower and their own energies. So this is something that I got from a very powerful impression being in the rainforest itself. And I have since come to apply to other parts of the world, and something that I can do in just a weekend walk in the park. Just like, say, Saturday afternoon, I can go to one of the parks and have those similar meditations as I walk around and appreciate the life that surrounds me, even if it is a different kind of ecosystem than what I saw when I was in Colombia. So those are just a couple of the examples of the ways that my recent travels have inspired like new applications, new daily practices that I have gathered from these very recent trips. I would definitely have a lot to say about the trip to Peru from 2019 as well, but I think for the interest of the length of this video, I will definitely like to reserve some of those other travel accounts to a larger series, because I have definitely a lot to say about the different places in Mexico, the different places in Peru, Guatemala, even the United States. I have different travels have given me different insights. And so I can say that it's kind of like major themes in each of the travels that I am trying to now integrate and incorporate into a larger, coherent life way. That and some of the larger ideas that come from synthesizing these different experiences and insights into a larger philosophical kind of like a mythos and worldview that I would like to kind of develop into a series for the Eye of the Serpent channel. So those are a couple of the examples from 2023 and 2024 that illustrate how I kind of look for inspiration and try to apply those in my daily life. And the final question that I received for the 2024 Q&A session for the Eye of the Serpent had to do with how to incorporate traditions from your own heritage and your own background, but in a way that avoids the problem of exclusivity. That is, how to incorporate traditions that are not closed or would not look of appropriation. And this is something that I've been grappling with a lot, especially thinking about my own Kora ancestry and the kinds of things that I would like to incorporate more into my daily ritual activity, but at the same time, it doesn't overstep places where I have not received any kind of initiation. So it's something that reflects my own background, but at the same time respects when a tradition is restricted to certain practitioners, such as shamans and other ceremonial leaders. And this is something that I have to be very conscientious about. And even if I do receive initiation into any of these traditions, they would often be restricted and therefore inappropriate to divulge to public media such as the channel. So this is something that I have also been looking to reconcile in my own practice. But I guess I've thought about, like, say, my most direct answer to this question is look at what everybody is doing, the kinds of practices that every household knows how to do. If you've had the chance to go to the area where that your ancestry is from and you want to reconnect with that, maybe look at some of the, like, say, the houses around the community and find out what they all have in common. Like, for example, when I visit the houses in Veracruz, where I've done a lot of my field work, many of the houses have copal incense. They have a small domestic altar. There may be annual ceremonies where one household will invite everybody to come in, and there will be tamales, there will be aguardiente, alcoholic drink, there could be music playing in the backgrounds. They may even hire musicians. So these are communal events. They are not restricted to any particular, like, say, specialist. You don't have it's not restricted to the healer or the shaman or other religious leaders in the community, because everybody knows how to do these things. Everybody does them. So they are general, they are communal, and therefore there's less risk of stepping into restricted activities. So look at what everybody is doing, like, say, for the Days of the Dead or Carnival Week or like, say, a harvest ceremony, and look and think about what commonalities do they all have. You may see that there is a very traditional use of a particular incense or the presentation of drinks for a certain ceremony. So these are things that are, in a sense, publicly available, public and communal knowledge. So there is less risk of appropriation or divulging restricted esoteric information once in the cases where it is available to everyone. And I would also suggest looking at, say, the larger area. So in my case, I am a Cora, but I also have relations with the Huichol and the Mexicaneros of the Nayarit area. So I could look at not just what is in my own specific national, or, like, say, my origin, but also look at what they have in common with the Huichol or the Huixárrica or the Mexicaneros and the Tepehuanes of this part of Nayarit. And that way I can find some things that are of meaning and are particular to that area, that allow me to connect with that part of my ancestry, but at the same time is not something that is exclusive to any particular group within that region. So that also minimizes the risk of appropriation from any specific area. So those are the kinds of guidelines that I've been using to think about and to reflect on what kinds of practices would be appropriate for me to incorporate into my life before any kind of initiation or any kind of, like, say, other conversations with specialists. And there's also the consideration of which of these practices would also be appropriate to share through public channels such as this one. So those are the kinds of reflections, and a lot of the kind of personal conversations, the internal dialogue that I've been having about reconciling this idea of finding ways to connect with your own ancestry, your own heritage, but at the same time being respectful for those traditions that could be appropriate or restricted. So you just have to kind of be respectful of whatever guidelines the practitioners, the communities themselves may give you about what could be appropriate to share with a larger audience versus those that are meant for just you yourself to make as part of your own private personal practice. So I know that there is a lot of controversy right now, especially in North America, about gatekeeping and about the appropriation of Native customs. And I respect those. I definitely have a lot to say about this ongoing conversation. So these are subjects that I would like to develop further ahead, especially in the coming years. So I may come back to these in the next Q&A session for 2025. So I will let you know probably in the summer of 2025 when I repost the new an invitation for you to bring in your questions for the next Q&A for next year. And so I want to thank everybody who has gave me their questions. I thought they were very valuable, and they've given me the opportunity to share some of my own impressions and experiences with the questions that you gave me. So I look forward to sharing more of these in 2025 and in the years to come. So thank you all for watching, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe to the Eye of the Serpent channel. Your support goes toward travel, research, and production. Thank you all for watching. I will see you in 2025, and good roads.